Coffee is big business in the islands. In fact, Hawaii is the main source of domestically grown coffee in the U.S. But crops and farms are under threat from disease and pests. And for years, there's been a battle to make sure coffee labels that read "grown in Hawaii" actually contain beans that are grown here. So how can we better protect Hawaii's coffee industry? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha, and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Daryl Huff. It's how many of us get that jolt to start our morning with a cup or two of coffee. It's been grown in Hawaii for more than 200 years, and over 2 centuries, it's grown into one of the state's top industries with a value of more than $100 million. But today, the crop faces a triple threat, including the cost of doing business, especially during the pandemic, authentication issues, and a fast-moving fungus that can wipe out a farm in just weeks. Our panel tonight will discuss ways to keep our coffee industry percolating. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guests. Suzanne Schreiner is a second-generation coffee farmer with Lionsgate Farms in South Kona on Hawaii Island. Coffee has been farmed there for more than a century. She's also the administrator of the Synergistic Hawaii Agriculture Council, a nonprofit that represents more than 500 businesses in the coffee, papaya, floriculture, and nursery industries. Thomas Greenwell is a fifth-generation coffee farmer in Kealakekua on Hawaii Island. Greenwell Farms was founded by his great-grandfather in 1850. Today, the company maintains and manages 145 acres of coffee orchards, producing 100% Kona coffee. Sharon Hurd has been with the State Department of Agriculture since 2007 and is currently the Business Development Program Manager in the Market Development Branch. She's a graduate of the University of Hawaii with a degree in zoology and has 27 years of sales and marketing experience in the airline industry. And Melissa Johnson is a research biologist with the USDA Agricultural Research Service in Hilo. She earned her bachelor's and master's degrees from UH Hilo and went on to earn her PhD in botany in California. Her current research focuses on special pest and disease challenges that Hawaii coffee growers are facing. And we'll be getting to that in a little bit, but what I'd like to ask Tom Greenwell and Suzanne Schreiner, tell me a little bit about what makes Hawaii coffee special. Is it the soil? Is it the sun? Or, what makes it different from other coffees? Tom, can you tell me, I like it, but how do I know that it's better? What makes it better?
Hawaii is a very unique growing region. We're kind of north of your average growing region throughout the world. We grow at a little lower elevation because of that than what you would call your high. But in Kona, especially, we have, the microclimate is probably key, number one, to our lot of sun, a lot of natural shade, and good rainfall. And pretty much that's what coffee needs. It's hard to really say why other than the microclimate. That's what that's where I say most of the credit goes to. And then, of course, the farmers.
Yeah, of course. Suzanne, speaking of farmers, Suzanne Schreiner, what is it? So it sounds like there's kind of a narrow band of geography where this works, above a certain level, certain angles, and so on. I mean, how many places do we have in Hawaii where you could grow coffee? Could we be growing it in more places? And I'd like to ask the same question I started with. Why is it what Tom just described that it affects the flavor of the berry?
Well, I think Tom nailed it with the microclimate. Our volcanic soils are very unique. Especially here in Kona, we have the new volcanic soil. You'll get a different flavor with the different soils. Ka'u tastes very different. Kauai tastes distinctly different. Their soils are much older. I like to say that we've got that aloha vibe. Our coffees are mellow, they're sweet, they're a little bit nutty with a little chocolate. They don't have a lot of bitterness that you'll find in other regions from the higher elevations. So we're really very blessed in that flavor.
Sure.
And the second question is, I think there is a lot more places we could grow, especially on the Big Island. We have such a diverse number of valleys, perhaps on Hamakua, different places that I think over time we're going to expand into.
Sharon Hurd, what do you see as the market outside? Is Hawaii coffee primarily exported? I mean, or do we have a large market here? And where does it go? And what are its selling qualities as the marketing person?
The selling quality is basically the cupping that Kona Coffee scores, Hawaii Coffee score very high. They're blind taste tests, so the testers don't really know where the coffee's from, but the scores are very high. So that's a good thing for marketing. In 2021, 20 to 2021, we had $45 million of what they call value of utilized production was 48.3 million. Of that 48.3 in that year, 11 million was exported. So where did the difference go? Probably to the US mainland, maybe the tourists bought it here, but there's the 48 million in production, 11 million was exported.
Let me ask Melissa Johnson with USDA, the scientific research part of this. What's the science behind the quality of the coffee? And is that something that can be duplicated anywhere else that you know of?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think Suzanne and Tom already kind of touched on that. And it really, I mean, we keep saying it over and over again, but it's because it's true. It's a really unique environment that it grows in here, the volcanic soils combined with a lot of sun. And then the natural shade that Tom mentioned, you know, we get that really nice cloud cover coming in over the Kona Hills in the afternoon, and Kou gets that too. You know, coffee naturally is an understory plant. And I think a lot of people, maybe in Hawaii especially, don't know that because most of our plantations are open sun. But the reason that we can do that is because we do have that natural cloud cover coming in. The plants need that. They don't like being out in the open sun. It's really hard on them. You know, the other part of why our coffee is so special and unique is that, especially on the Big Island, I mean, we have around 800 small, mostly family-owned farms. And people tend to their farms a lot differently here, I would say, than they would in other countries. You know, we do have access to more products here, even though they are more expensive. We probably have more inputs than a lot of other countries are putting into their coffee, more fertilizers and things like that. And I think our growers put a lot of time and care into their coffee. And I think that's part of why our coffee is so special. And it scores, as Sharon said, so high in the world specialty market.
Tom, you know, that mention that Melissa made of the care you put into the coffee. Describe what the operation is like. I mean, and don't go into too much detail, but I mean, for example, how many, you've only got 100, I mean, I say only, you know, I'm somewhat familiar with farms on the mainland where people have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres. Is 145 acres, is that a big farm, small farm for Hawaii? And what's it like operating on your farm? What's your end product that you ultimately sell to someone?
Yeah, you know, we have 140 or more acres, but it's made up of about eight or nine farms, smaller farms. We have a couple 35-acre farms. We're developing right now, you know, close to 200-acre eventually. But we also have some 3-acre and 5-acre farms. So we have a lot of different techniques, as you know, as far as farming goes. We do in the larger farms, we use tractors and sprayers, and you know, one guy can manage a 35-acre farm. Where when we move out to the smaller farms, we have a crew of men that work together, put on backpacks and, you know, hiking shoes and big boots, and they get out in the field, and everything's done by hand. And we have really good source of nutrients. We do, available to us. A lot of micronutrients. So, we can kind of tweak the trees a little bit. Give them what they need when they need it.
Let me ask, Tom, so when you're done, and we saw pictures of people pulling berries off of trees, what happens to the berries after that?
It goes to when they pick it, it goes to the processing plant where we depulp or remove the pulp from the beans, ferment it overnight, dry it in the morning or start drying it. And if you mechanically dry, it'll take about 48 hours, or in the sun, it can take up to 7 days. And then the beans go and they rest for a while, and then we take it to a mill where we remove the parchment from the bean. And now that's where the green bean, the traded commodity, green coffee beans. And then from there it goes to the roasting.
So let me pick it up, Suzanne Schreiner. So this process, do you also, we say go to the roaster, where's the roaster? Is that like a centralized place where everybody takes their coffee and it gets roasted, or is it your own roaster, or each individual farm has a roaster?
Well, with having probably, UHC-TAR says there's about 1,400 farmers. Most of these farmers probably don't roast themselves. There's probably, I would guess, under a couple of hundred smaller estate farms who take it all the way to roast themselves. And a lot of them will roast directly on their farm. Tom roasts on his farm. We roast on our family processing farm. And some other people will take it to a roaster, but most people will do it on the farm themselves. And the average farm size in Kona is about 4.8 acres, just under 5 acres. So these really are small family farms running these businesses.
Let me ask, I don't know if Melissa or Sharon's the right one to ask that question. So you've got this huge number of individual plots of land. I mean, it sounds like a lot to me. Maybe I'm just naive, but it sounds like a lot of individual plots versus very large processors. Is those individual plots due to the fact that just the terrain is so difficult, or would it be better, more efficient if they were larger farms instead of all these individual ones? Melissa, why don't you take that on?
Sure. I think it also goes back to that first question that you asked, which is what makes Hawaii coffee so special and unique. A lot of people don't realize that all of the coffee on the Big Island is all handpicked. So that ties into the terrain. So if you've ever walked around in Kona, it's very rocky, and the trees are planted together very closely in tight rows. So there's really only enough room for a person to walk through and pick. And as you might know, the labor in Hawaii is very expensive. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges that growers in Hawaii face, is how do we get enough people willing to go out there and pick all of this coffee from the trees? And that ties into the pest problems that we'll talk about later too.
Sharon, in terms of from the Ag Department, what kind of things can you do or are being done at that level to encourage the success of these multiple individual businesses? It must be kind of difficult to work with an industry that has got so many different individual farmers working on it.
Actually, we promote statewide, so it's really not that difficult. We take the 1,400 farmers that Suzanne mentioned. We take Tommy's volume of coffee, and we went just last week. I was at Dubai in the United Arab Emirates at the biggest regional trade show in the Middle East called Gulf Food. In that region, they don't grow very much of their food at all, so most of it is imported. So we had the Hawaii Department of Agriculture had a presence. We had two vendors. One was the Kona Naturals coffee, and the other vendor was the Hawaii Tropical Fruit Growers. They were both big hits. Okay, so what is the department doing to promote coffee? We paid for the booth. Actually, the federal government, well, long story is just that basically we paid for the booth. We had Doug McKenna from Kona Naturals there. And if I could have shown you a video, he had a steady stream of interested customers. And he had told the contractor that we work with I'm only looking for that top tier, Jumeirah, Ritz-Carlton. I just want these people. And he met with them and came away with some great feedback. So the state markets, to be fair and equal to all, we market to all in the state. We don't really take one island or one county and promote that. It's not hard to sell Hawaiian coffee, let me tell you. It's almost like an attitude. When you say you're drinking a cup of Hawaiian coffee, you kind of drift off, And so the branding is Hawaiian. And as Tommy and Suzanne know, Kona coffee is well known, but in that little tiny high sliver of drinker, coffee aficionado that the Specialty Coffee Association caters to. But in the general sense, what we do at the department is we promote Hawaiian coffee.
Okay, let me start with our viewer questions. We're getting a few in, and I know this is a question that will provoke quite a lot of discussion, and it's, how can they market coffee with only 2% Kona coffee as Kona coffee? Sharon, let me start with you on that. I mean, I think we're all a little confused by the percentages that are out there. Like, you go to someplace in town and you'll say, oh, there's 10% Kona or 10% some other thing. And you go, well, what's the rest of it, right? And then other times you buy 100% Kona or Hawaii coffee, and it's really expensive. So I'm just curious, so to answer, please answer the question from the viewer. How can they market coffee with only 2% Kona coffee as Kona coffee? Sharon?
Okay. We follow the law. Any government entity follows the law. And as we all know, every year in the ledge, as is again the case this year, there's a bill to say you can't market anything that's less than, I think it's 51% of Kona as Kona. But remember one thing, to the viewer that sent in the question, our laws only pertain to the state of Hawaii. Our laws do not go beyond our state. We can't implement what goes on in the mainland. And the law currently says we can call 10% blend, 10% blend Kona. You can say Kona. I don't know where the 2% comes from. Maybe Suzanne or Marissa or Tommy know, but I'm not familiar with the 2%. Sometimes they'll say Hawaiian blend, 2% Kona. Maybe that's it.
Suzanne, I'm curious as to what's going on there. So when it's blended, where is it blended here? Like, do people bring in coffee from other places and mix it up here and then get that bag to the store, or does it go off to somewhere else and then get repackaged and brought back here or sold other places?
It's a little bit of both. And Hawaii is uniquely probably one of the only coffee regions in the world that allows imported coffee into their growing regions. It's very dangerous. It's a vector for pest and disease, and the farmers really want to block that. We do not want this foreign coffee in our fields or near our fields. And the 10% blend is very challenging because you're talking about 90% foreign beans. You're not really going to ever taste the Kona or the Maui or the Ka'u in a 10% blend. Really, they're just marketing off the name and making a very good living off of it. But it comes off the skin of the farmer's back, because that does impact our bottom line. People who buy a cup of coffee, maybe at a fast food place that's labeled as a Kona blend, have a bad cup of coffee, and they'll never want to try a good cup of 100% Kona, or even a 51% blend. That's kind of our compromise in the ledge this year, is we're asking for a 51% blend phased in over time. That's really what the growers want to see.
Yeah, Tom, that must be really distressing to hear what Sharon just said. This is the only place that even allows these coffees to come in, and it creates pest issues and so on. Where's the pressure coming from that would not allow us to have our own product without it being diluted?
Blend, I think, goes way back. When all I could say is when I got into business in 1985, and it was basically the blenders who bought the coffee in Kona. And I guess at that time, it was a small 100% market, right? And we went in for a 51% blend law, and we came out with a 10%. We all looked at each other and said, what happened? You know? And I don't know where that came from.
Oh, I see. So sorry to interrupt, Tom, but you're saying that even predates you. This is back in the days when the industry was in its infancy and the market was the blender, it sounds like. And so if you were going to sell your coffee, that was who was in the market. Melissa, is USDA involved in this at all? Is this something that could be a federally regulated issue?
My facility is not directly involved in that. We are really focused on research. So yeah, that might be a better question.
But let me ask you this though, where are all these other coffees coming from that are getting blended, and do they pose a threat to the local growers?
You know, Suzanne might know better, and Tom as well, where the coffees are coming from. I suspect they're coming from mostly South and Central America and also Africa probably. But they certainly do stand a chance of bringing in pests and diseases. You know, the green coffee is supposed to be fumigated before it's brought in. And so in theory, that should prevent pests from being brought in with the coffee. But we still don't even know how coffee berry borer came into Hawaii. It could have been brought in on passengers on flights. It could have been brought in by workers unsuspectingly from other countries. You know, we have a lot of workers that come here to pick the coffee specifically, and they travel back and forth between Central and South America. So it could have been brought in that way. But yeah, even the untreated coffee is a big issue, and other plant parts too.
Let me ask Sharon Hurd, I mean, what is there today? What is the reason today that this is allowed to happen?
Price. Are you going to sell one bag of 10% Kona blend for $7? Or are you going to sell, are you going to sell 10 bags of 10% Kona blend for $7? Or are you going to sell one bag of 100% Kona coffee, the best coffee in the world, for $30? It's a price thing. So if you're a tourist and you're coming in for omiyage, you're going to buy 10 bags of the $7 coffee, thinking that you're buying something from Hawaii. You're really buying 90% something from probably Guatemala or something, but
okay,
it's all price.
I get back to the same question though. I don't get why we can't, I mean, I'll ask this way, Suzanne, is there could the industry survive without the blenders doing this? I mean, could you, regardless of price point, be able to produce, you know, have a market that would sustain you if all you did, if it was always 100% Hawaii coffee?
Absolutely, yes. And let me give you an example. We grow about 2 million pounds of coffee in the state, but estimates say that 20 million pounds of Kona is sold on the mainland. So that's a lot of fraudulent coffee. In the last 2 years here in Hawaii, we have not had tourists. Our restaurants have been severely restricted. All the places that normally sell blends have been shut for business. Yet for the average farmer, we are selling more coffee than ever before because of work from homers around the world. And our prices have gone up. So counter to the argument that if we pull the blends out, we're going to kill our market, we're actually thriving without the blends. And we're fighting really hard in the legislature to make this happen because we feel very strongly that the value of Kona goes up when we protect our brand name.
Sharon, I just got to ask this question again. So where's who comes in and makes the argument that, you know, that it should be limited to 50% or 10%? I mean, where is the leverage in the legislature? Who are the people that are coming in there and convincing our legislators that they can't just do this and protect the local industry? I mean, I'm not a protectionist, but it strikes me that the middle ground is so swishy that it's hard to find a middle ground.
I mean, Daryl, you've hit the nail on the head. Where is the demand? So I suggest you go into the Hawaii legislative website, read the testimony, read the testimony. Who's for it? Who's against it? The farmers are for it. They support the 51% blend, as Suzanne and Tommy said. The people that are testifying against it are the ones that are the retailers, the distributors, the blenders, the ones that have the money piece, you know, the ones that want to make the sale. The testifiers are the ones that I think you would go to, the ones that are doing the blending and the retailing.
So sorry, I'm just very interested in this, and I'm probably pushing this more than I should. I got 35 minutes to go or so, but I'm fascinated by this as a concept. Is okay. So let's say I had a ton of money and I wanted to make this happen. I wanted to make it so 100% of Hawaii coffee is sold as 100% Hawaii coffee. Is there some investment that has to be made in the middle section of this chain that goes from the farmer to the buyer that has to be made to change the system? Or could it exist on its own without someone making an investment, say, in a giant roasting or marketing or distribution system?
Okay, Daryl, we are very fortunate that we have a WUSADA state WUSADA export intern who's done some digging into this. I'm going to answer the question with some statistics, okay? So from the world to the world, guess who the #2 coffee exporter is? The first one is Brazil. Second one is Switzerland. Switzerland exports this. They're the #2 market. Now, how can that be? Switzerland doesn't grow a single bean of coffee. Okay, that answers your question. They import, oh gosh, Switzerland imports in 2020, they imported, well, the difference, let me put it this way, the coffee that they imported from the world, from Brazil and Colombia, minus, you know, as compared to the amount of coffee that they exported, because they're the #2 exporter, was $2 billion. So the money is in the roasting and the reselling as a value-added product. So that's where the money is. So the farmer gets what they get, which is generally not very much for the green bean. I'm going to estimate that maybe a Kona coffee farmer gets $10, $11, $12 a pound. They take that, split it 10% all over, and they're going to make a lot more money as a roasted 10% blend retail product. Switzerland's the best example of that their intern, Stevie Fromm is his name. He found that. It was really an eye-opener. You know, does that help?
Yes, it does. But Tom, you want to say anything on this before we move on to another subject? I see you there in your chair going, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it is. It's about money, and you know, if Kona's a limited supply of coffee. Maui has a limited supply. Kauai has pretty big supply, but there's a finite amount of coffee there, ka'u. And a blender can take it in tenfold, right? And he's selling Kona, they're selling Hawaii. And, you know, that's why they do it. That's why they fight very hard to not have, you know, the percentage change.
Okay, I think I understand now. So Suzanne, I guess the trick is to essentially make them not able to label it Kona or Hawaii coffee or Kauai coffee or ka'u, but we can't control what they label it because all we can control is what's in the state of Hawaii.
Correct, but we've been told by the federal powers that be that if we can enact a 51% rule here, that we can start working that on the mainland as well. Orange Juice did that out of Florida, and then that moved into a federal issue. Orange Juice had the same problem back in the early 80s. They were just a more powerful lobby. And I think that's on the docket for us down the line. But first we have to convince our legislators that we're no longer a plantation economy with coffee or any of our products, that we are a state economy, vertically integrated, and that our small farms can be economically viable when we support them.
Okay, I have to start moving on. I've got a big pile of questions that I've been ignoring in my own fascination with this particular issue. So another interesting question we got is about do the imported coffees used in blends have to comply with minimum grade standards that our Hawaii-grown coffees are required to comply with? I guess, I don't know which one of you would be the best one to answer. So what this goes to is, what is the Kona or Hawaii coffee being mixed in with? And is it always Kona coffee or Hawaii coffee? Are they sometimes slipping in other kinds of coffee? And how do we even know? Sharon?
Let Tom answer that.
Yeah, Suzanne. Oh, Tom, go ahead.
No, there are no grade standards for the coffee that is imported to blend with Kona. I mean, I've heard of coffee being blended with this quality, I mean, a very low quality, even a Robusta. You know, I mean, that's really destroying our image.
I got a question along those lines of, what is the difference between Robusta and Arabica? And is it common to blend the two? Is there a way of knowing whether you're getting good coffee when you're buying a blend, a 10% blend? Suzanne?
Well, the difference between Arabica and Robusta comes down to the phenology of the tree, and Melissa can probably address that better, but they're very distinct flavors. Robusta is more like a Folgers level coffee. It's a very bitter, high in caffeine, very cheap to grow. Biggest Robusta grower in the world is probably Vietnam, second to Indonesia, and it's very, very inexpensive. So you will know this if you taste the difference between an Arabica and a Robusta. They're quite distinct.
So Sharon, maybe you could answer this question. So when I buy this 10% blend, will it tell me if I'm getting Robusta or Arabica, or is it just say 10%? They don't tell me that.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So Melissa, let's start getting into some of these threats, the pest threats that you deal with so much. What are the big threats right now, and how are we doing with them, and how big a threat are these to the farmers?
Sure. So I guess I'll start at the beginning. You know, prior to 2010, you know, we really didn't have any major pests or diseases of coffee, at least nothing that was really catastrophic for the industry. You know, growers could, you know, do the basic care for their plants, do the fertilization and pruning and harvesting. And that was really essentially what they needed to do to have a good crop. When coffee berry borer came in, well, it was detected in 2010 in Kona. It's a very tiny beetle. It bores into the coffee berry itself and in through past the pulp and into the bean, which is what you drink. And it lays offspring in the bean, and then the offspring develop. And as they develop, they eat the bean. So it essentially ruins the coffee bean. That's been our biggest problem that we've been dealing with for the last 10 years. Growers have had to totally change the way that they grow coffee because of it. Now they have to do a lot of sanitation in order to keep those pest levels at manageable levels. So at the end of harvest, one of the most important things that they need to do is remove any remaining berries that are on the trees or on the ground. And that limits the reproductive cycle of this coffee berry borer. You know, they reproduce in the off season in these old berries on the trees and on the ground. And you can have hundreds and hundreds of these insects in each berry. So then when the grower is starting their new coffee season, they're starting at a very high infestation level, and it's really hard to come back from that. So what we found in our last 10 years of research on coffee berry borer is that sanitation is hugely important. And that goes back to the problem of labor, right? If all of this coffee is hand-picked for harvest, it also has to be hand removed at the end of the season from all of these trees. And there's simply not enough people to do that. So you have a lot of leftover coffee on the trees and on the ground, and that creates this perpetual cycle of reinfestation. And then in 2020, you know, we got the second big incursion, a fungal pathogen called coffee leaf rust, which most of you have probably heard about by now. It's a terrible fungus. It affects many other coffee growing regions around the world. We're, of course, because we're so isolated, we're one of the last places that grows coffee that got coffee berry borer and coffee leaf rust. So there's already been a lot of research on these pests and diseases, but we have to learn now how to manage them in Hawaii's very unique climate, with all of our very small farms that are packed together in a tight cluster. And it's much more expensive to grow coffee and do everything that a grower needs to do here in Hawaii compared to places in Central and South America and Africa, where labor is cheap, inputs are cheap. So yeah, coffee leaf rust is a big problem, not just because it affects the quality of the coffee that you're drinking, but it actually affects the plant itself. So the fungus attacks the leaves. It causes the leaves to drop over time. And then the plant, of course, it can't photosynthesize anymore. So it eventually can lead not just to crop loss and reduced yields, but it can actually cause plant death. So I would say coffee leaf rust is a huge threat, unlike anything that Hawaii has ever dealt with in the past.
Tom, I understand from some of my reading is that one of the solutions to the rust issue is literally finding strains of coffee where they've managed to resist it and then planting them here. Is that, have I got that right? Melissa, first of all, have I got that right? And then for Tom, for you've had these plants. I mean, is that realistic to be replacing them steadily with another strain? And how do you even do that?
Well, if I mean, replant our farm about every we're supposed to replant about every 25 years. For us, we do have rust resistant trees that were brought in the 90s through the legal channels, through quarantine, grown out with the help of Hawaii Agricultural Research Center, ARC, and we had them on here on the farm, and they're doing great. But there's a lot of old farms in Kona. They're 100-year-old trees, and it's kind of hard to go out there, cut them down, take them out, and replant. I'm going to try and survive, keep them surviving. Some of these trees are planted by my great grandmother in 1900, and kind of walk out there, it's like, yeah,
like family.
No, it's family, yeah. But the rust resistant trees will be part of surviving this battle, because the rust's not going to all of a sudden one day stop like the volcano does. It's going to continue, and it will be part of our toolbox to continue fighting rust. Being able to be able to maintain farming of coffee.
Yeah, so as you're going from a plantdemic to an endemic. Sorry. Suzanne, let me ask you, how much of a threat are these pests to your ability to function? If your labor costs are getting pushed up, you've got to make these changes. I mean, how much of a threat is this to, is it easier if you've got a medium-sized farm or a big farm or a small farm to deal with these threats?
Well, I think small farms are particularly challenged because of the labor. Small farms tend not to have neat rows. A lot of our older farms are kind of planted before we had big tractors to punch holes in the ground. And those farms are really struggling right now to figure out how to proceed. And that includes my family farms, our 3 small farms between my generations. And I'm really not sure yet how we're going to make do. One of our farms is a lower elevation. We lost about 5% of our trees this year to coffee leaf rust. They just up and died because it was a rocky farm, not a lot of soil, and soil health is really important with coffee leaf rust. So we're evaluating how we're going to proceed. Do we yank these trees out? Do we start mowing down an acre at a time and replanting? But what do we replant with? Is it going to taste as good as our Kona typica? What are these new varieties going to do? So there's just a lot of questions right now. And I think in a couple of years, we'll have a lot better answers. But right now, we're struggling with it.
It sounds very expensive. And Sharon Hurd, where's the state in terms of being there for helping this industry survive? And is it important that this industry survive? I mean, if you can't survive, some might say, well, I'm sorry, it's dog eat dog, it's free enterprise. I mean, is it the government's role to step in and save an industry, and what's the value in saving that industry, and what's the cost of saving that industry?
Okay, Sean Clark, our state statistician, has estimated from the year 2021 to 2022, the estimated value of coffee for the state is going to be $60 million. Yeah, it's worth saving. Yeah, for sure. It is very expensive. Can the farmers afford it? No. But I'm looking at Suzanne right now because she was part of a bill and ARS. I'm looking at Marissa. They were awarded, was it 6 million or 9 million, Suzanne?
6 million.
6 million to make Hawaii the center of coffee research. And we owe a lot to, Dave Chun and his group in Congress to put this all together and create this coffee research center for the world. Is that good, Suzanne? Is that going to be it? Maybe I should let you take over from here.
Yeah, we brought together a consortium between Puerto Rico and Hawaii includes Melissa at ARS, includes University of Hawaii, both at Manoa and the Extension Group, as well as some specialists in Purdue, Michigan State, to really focus on this issue for our farmers here and to better understand how to proceed over the next few years.
Melissa, let me ask, is that primarily a disease and pest kind of enterprise, or is that also marketing and product improvement and that sort of thing as well? And is there money from the federal government also to support these kinds of enterprises?
Yeah, so our facility does, of course, provide us a lot of funding to do our research, but getting these outside grants really are ideal because, as Suzanne said, they bring together a lot of institutions, and that's really what we need for a problem as big as this. Each of us can't do this alone, so we need expertise from a lot of different areas. A lot of our research, it's really one-on-one with the grower. The monitoring program that I've been running for coffee berry borer for the last 5 years or so, and now with coffee leaf rust, we spend a lot of time in the field with the growers. We talk to them about what they're doing to manage these different pests and diseases, and we're collecting data right alongside with them. Weather data, biological data on the pests and diseases, data on how what their fertilizer regime is, what their pruning methods are. So the idea is that we can put all of this information together, and we're hoping to get a predictive model out of all of this that we can then forecast for growers when they can expect outbreaks of pests and diseases, so that they'll know ahead of time where they need to focus, targeted sprays on their farms, when they need to focus on sanitation and things like that.
Let me ask, I've got a couple of questions from Tanya via Facebook that are interesting questions in that, can this industry, or does this industry, or will this industry be a place for more high-tech or high education type jobs? I think people picture, workers coming and, ag workers, many from understate, you mentioned they migrate. But when you start talking about the scientific and research aspects of this, I would imagine that College of Tropical Agriculture, places like that, and Hilo might be generating, there's an opportunity for jobs here for people, local people who want to get educated into this research, into this industry. And it's, the question specifically, what about working with UH students to solve the disease issues on coffee farms and provide scholarships to our students who assist as workers too? And also, are these businesses hiring our local people, high school kids, offering scholarships to college for our high school workers? Let me ask Tom, do you see that at some point the industry might be a place for a whole multiple levels of employment for folks?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, we talk about labor shortage, right? How do you pick coffee? We bring, you know, thousands of people into Hawaii to pick our coffee. Robotics. And obviously, you know, with the new technology comes along, young minds think different than us old buggers, you know. But, you know, I mean, that's what it is. And, you know, we don't, our, you know, kids think farming, and that's what they think. And no way, they're gone. They don't realize that coffee offers a lot of higher skill work, you know, technology. I mean, the technology in the coffee industry is, I mean, I use it all over the place on the farm now. Color sorters, optic scanners, you know, equipment in the field. Yeah, absolutely. We need to get the young ones.
Yeah, Melissa, on that point, are there, do people know about this? And is there, when your organization, I understand, it also deals with a lot of tropical crops, not just coffee. And I mean, do you see that as a real economic development driver? And how do we make that leap? Or have we already made it, we just don't know about it?
Sure. Yeah, this is a question I think about all the time. I mean, I grew up here, and I've always been interested in sustainable agriculture, but a lot of young people here are not. Even though UH has an agriculture program, we don't have a really high enrollment in the program. The program really doesn't get enough funding, in my opinion. My facility at ARS here in Hilo, we recruit students all the time for all sorts of projects. On the coffee project alone, we hired 2 UH students out of the undergrad computer programming department. And we brought them on as computer programmers for this mobile app that we've been working on that will help growers to get out and monitor pests and diseases on their farms. So they were a key feature in this work that we've been doing. And they've gone on to some really great jobs after that. And that's an ongoing theme that ARS has, is bringing in local students. We have student researchers that help us all the time on projects. But I do think that there's a lot more work that needs to be done to bring in local kids into agriculture and teach them about, you know, where our food comes from and how important it is that we learn about farming, and that we have young people to replace all of the growers that we're losing, that are retiring or getting out of the business. You know, it's going to be a huge gap that's not going to be filled. I have growers that tell me all the time, you know, I love what I do, but I have no one to replace me. And it's pretty sad. So it's definitely something that we need to be working on, you know, more interagency collaborations, more collaborations with the universities, and more funding to get kids out and get them interested in agriculture. But as Tommy said, I think precision agriculture is a huge sector that really we're just kind of at the beginning with coffee. I talked a little bit about app development, but as Tommy mentioned, there's a lot of different areas that kids, I think, with their, you know, knowledge of computers and iPhones and tablets and programming that they all have, they would be very hireable to improve the way that coffee and many other crops are grown across the state.
Sharon, I see you nodding your head. Sharon Hearn from the Department of Agriculture. Is there a movement there in government? I mean, I know that at the legislature there's a lot of emphasis on agriculture this year. Particularly, I know Senate President Kochi is very interested in tying together, for example, agriculture and schools, agriculture and hospitals and institutions. What is happening in that regard, and trying to set up sort of a gown to town kind of synergy that could lead to this kind of growth economically?
The economic development in that framework that you're talking about really is, I'm going to call on Suzanne as well, because it's the floriculture industry that's taking the lead on in the CTE type education, career technical education in high schools and middle schools. What they're focusing on now, the pandemic taught the floriculture industry that they cannot rely on offshore propagation. They cannot rely on help from overseas. We got to start developing the talent within our state. So the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, through the legislature gave the Department of Agriculture $100,000, and the floriculture industry is using that for tissue culture to teach students and set up more knowledge within the state for tissue culture, which when Tommy finds out which of those coffee leaf rest trees are producing the highest quality coffee bean, maybe he can sell it, sell the tissue culture, and then we propagate it and then sell it out to the coffee growers to use a tried and true, minimize the risk, economic development type plan that they can repopulate their fields with this coffee leaf rest resistant, high quality, high cupping score tree. I mean, that's going to save the industry, but it all has to do with the expertise that we need to develop in state to produce these types of tissue cultures. And I believe ARS has a tissue culture facility. I think there's 4 in the state. But hey, I went to the cannery every year when I was in high school, every summer, like clockwork. Report to the cannery. Kids should maybe get into that, I'm going to learn a new skill this year, something like that. It's the key, I think.
I need to ask you, at the very beginning of the program, we talked about how the magic of the Hawaii coffee is this narrow band of perfect environmental conditions. And Dan of Kailua asks sort of a 500-pound gorilla in the room question, is climate change affecting the coffee industry? Tom, I mean, are you seeing it? Are you getting a little nervous about what's going to happen to that perfect little band of coffee growing place?
Well, of course, but we've been affected by the volcano and the rainfall in Kona for so long that I don't know what weather we're supposed to have anymore. 35 years or more of that volcano going off, our rainfall was 40% less. And if that's the way, climate change is going to affect us, yeah, it's not so good. It's going to, and we have right now, hopefully a chance to bring in a plant that was designed for dry climate, farming. And it's supposed to have a really good cup. Hopefully someday we'll be able to get this plant, to Hawaii to try it. It might be their savior.
Melissa, I'm remembering, I can't remember what it was called, but when there was a big pest issue with Hawaiian papaya and it was banned from being sold on the mainland, and they came up with a couple ways of solving the problem, but one of them was with and I hate to use this word because it could have started a whole new program, but they managed to modify the organism in order so that it wouldn't give you the bugs wouldn't survive. Now, Tom was mentioning the plant that could come and be the new plant. Is that involved, that kind of engineering, or is it more old-fashioned, you clip and you choose or you find something from somewhere else? Where is that plant going to come from?
That's a good question. I don't know that I have the answer to that either. I think Hawaii in general is pretty sensitive to GMOs and to growing GMOs in general. So I think if that were going to come to the table, it would be kind of an uphill battle. In terms of coffee berry borer, people have tried to look at other varieties. You mentioned Robusta. There are other varieties of coffee out there that maybe have a harder berry that the coffee berry borer wouldn't be able to bore through. So people have looked at those sorts of things. But the Arabica, the variety Typica that we grow here in Hawaii, it's grown here for a reason. It's because of its really distinct, wonderful flavor. And those other species and varieties of coffee just don't taste as good. So it would be difficult, I think, to bring in something else to replace what we have here.
Okay, let me, last question of our show now to Susan Schreiner. You've talked about sort of this existential worry you have. What do you think are the top 2 things or 3 things at most, and I've only got about a minute, that need to happen now to ensure that you're going to be able to survive as a grower and others will survive too?
First, we have to protect our marketplace by getting the 51% blend rule through. Second, we need to protect our ports with biosecurity rules enforcement to prevent another coffee leaf rust coming through. And the third one, maybe I'll kick that to Tom to see if he has any thoughts on what I've missed. Those are the first two that come to mind for me.
Really short, Tom. I've got about 20 seconds.
Yeah, no, you hit the probably most important, I think.
Okay. Well, I heard an awful lot about this tension between the growers and the blenders. It's like the Hatfields and McCoys out there, and hope we can get that resolved. Anyway, I want to thank our viewers. Mahalo to you for joining us tonight, and we'd like to thank our guests as well, Suzanne Schreiner of Lionsgate Farms in South Kona, Thomas Greenwell of Greenwell Farms in Kealakekua, Sharon Hurd from the State Department of Agriculture, and USDA Agricultural Research Service biologist Melissa Johnson. Next week on Insights, an issue that's plagued the state for decades, the lack of affordable housing. We'll hear what some lawmakers are pushing for, and we'll discuss the affordability gap that's growing as cost of living and home prices continue to rise. Please join us then. I'm Daryl Huff for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.